And then speaking of cities and superheroes, I was dumping more time into City of Heroes. Man, that game. Okay, the City of Heroes, does it have okay? It's a game from 2004, so you have to give it some slack. It's an MMO from 2004. You have to give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt that some things are going to be a little dated, and it has dated things, right? It has like skill trainers and stuff like that. But like, okay, does it have the most amazing visuals? No. Does it have the most incredible combat? No. Does it have the most amazing presentation and like storytelling ability? No. No, it doesn't. But goddamn, that game. I just love that world. I just love the world that it's in. It is like this. That game loves superheroes. It loves them to death. And superhero comics, it is just in every single corner. I feel like I'm always seeing some kind of new, cool environment. It's able to run through so many different themes, from like fantasy to, there's like obviously the city stuff, like modern kind of slightly high-tech city. But there's like fantasy. There's like weird, almost post-apocalyptic, like wreckage, whole like zones that are like that. Like I love the way that Fault Line looks, just like these huge, these huge ravines and that have broken up all the parts of the city. I think I've found like my new favorite location, which is the Night Ward, which is the location. It's the place where the afterlife and the mortal world overlap. Excuse me. It's where they overlap. And it's like this, it's like the same city, but it's always night, and it has this kind of like gothic lighting and aesthetic. And there's this whole thing with like the stewards of the afterlife, who are like these, I don't know how to describe it. They're like old British night watchmen, but they have these weird heads. They're made of like candle wax. And there's like spirits walking around. It's just like this super cool environment compared to the rest of the game. Like very unique compared to the rest of the game. Just so cool. I have also, when I talk about old game jank, this game does have that. And I ran into one of those things, which I was not even aware of because I wasn't really far enough in the game, like high enough in level count to really catch it or to run into it. You can out-level quest lines in this game. Like, quests are entirely based around, what are called contacts, which are like quest givers, but they are characters that you talk to and that you have on like your little remote, not like a phone, but it's just, you can contact them remotely. And they give you the next objective, and they are who you like kind of interface with the story through. And quest lines are, as they call them, story arcs, are bound to like specific level ranges. It'll be like level 20 through 29. And if you're too low, you can't start the mission. You can't start it. And if you are above that, if you're above that range, you also cannot start it. So you can out-level storylines. There is a solution, though. I think once you reach like level 15 or 20 or something, you get access. There is a form of level sync. So if you play a game like FF14, FF14 has a mechanic where I don't think there's actually a cap on. They don't lock you out of doing quest lines, but dungeons. If you're going to do a dungeon that's set for a level that is much further below you, you do that. Or sorry, if you're over leveled for a dungeon from what it's defined as being for, once you queue into it, you will just be level synced, as they call it, and you will just automatically be dropped down to that level or whatever the max level of the range is. And you will have the abilities that you had at that level and the stats and everything. And you'll just be adjusted. And it works just fine. It's nice. City of Heroes has a version of that, but of course they lean into the theming 110%. So it's not just like an automatic thing that happens of like, oh, if you're on this quest line, you're gonna be dropped down. No, you have to go and, which I guess makes sense because if, you know, what are you gonna adjust? Are you gonna be adjusted for like every single, like until you like complete it or until you give up the, or if you like delete the quest or something like. So what they do is you get the ability to open a portal to a dimension called Ouroboros, which is outside of time and space. And there's like a whole faction of basically like time cops who fix temporal anomalies throughout time. And you can use their like crystals, and you run up to the crystal and you click it and it just gives you a bunch of drop down lists of every different level range and what the storylines are for them. And then you like select one and then it just teleports you there. It just straight teleports you there. I think it's instanced actually. Like there aren't any other players. You're like time traveling back in time. You're level adjusted to whatever the max level is if you are past that point. And then you can just do it. And you know what I found out? This game actually has some good storylines. I was kind of just clicking through it because it's presented as just walls of text. But if you actually take the time, like the 5 seconds to actually read what's going on, there's some pretty interesting ones. It's actually a game that this would probably turn people off. But it is a game I would recommend playing with a guide on what story arcs to do. Because number one, they are designed to give you enough XP to get you to like, you know, the next set of levels. Like it's how the leveling experience is designed, is to be doing, you're not supposed to be doing like the repeatable missions. The game has like a whole thing of repeatable missions and things like that, which is just kind of like fluff. It's just there to always make sure that you have a source of experience and money and stuff like that. No, like you're kind of supposed to be doing story arcs. That's kind of how the game is designed to be played. But because it's an old game, it's a little bit obtuse, and it doesn't really tell you that. You just kind of go all over the city and the different areas and the big zones, and sometimes you run into those big story arcs, and sometimes you just don't, and there's ones that I missed. And it turns out that there's literally a guide of like all the best story arcs and how/when to do them. And I've just been like time traveling back, and I've been doing the story arcs because I you know what started is I was doing the main arc for the Night Ward, and it is a sequel. The Night Ward content is like a sequel to the previous zone, which was the first ward, as it's called, which is like a daytime version of the Night Ward. And they're referencing things that happened that I'm like, wait, what? I literally feel like I jumped into a comic run and I didn't realize that there's like context that I needed to actually read some other stuff beforehand. Because I thought it was really fun. I really liked the Night Ward story so far. There's this whole thing where there's like this coven of witches called the Talons of Vengeance, and they have they've been doing some shit that has been causing a bunch of souls, like they've been causing a bunch of souls to head to the afterlife and like making sacrifices or something. And the problem with that is that the way that the afterlife in City of Heroes works is there are these like night watchman guys that I mentioned. They're called like whatever, the stewards or whatever. They're essentially like they shuffle people between worlds, between the life. They shuffle souls into the afterlife via like a ghost train. And it's like a business for them. And they essentially have this higher power that they answer to, and they are rewarded with wax. They're rewarded with candle wax, which keeps them like replenished because they're made out of wax, and lit. And because of the influx of souls going into the Night Ward, the these guys, the value of a human soul has been driven down by market economics. And so they're kind of like, they're freaking out and it's fucking up their business. And so they have to like shuttle as many as they can, because now that the value of there's so many souls, not only have the value of the souls gone down, that means that they're getting less wax per spirit. So they have to like, they're freaked out and they have to send as many through as possible. And I'm like, that's really funny. And you run into this problem as part of this whole thing where there's like this mansion of like kind of gothic themed characters called the Midnighters, or the Midnight Society or something like that. And there's some thing with like some evil wizard guy, and you have to go get his soul back. And because he has this spell, there's a bunch of like living spells loose in the mansion that you have to put down, like orbs and shit like that you have to go fight. And then they're like, yeah, they were all like laid there by this evil wizard dude because he turned evil on us. And then you have to go grab his soul before it gets taken off on the ghost train, and then bring him all the way back to the mansion, and then go grab his armor so that he can inhabit it because his body's rotted away. And then you have to go fight him because he's evil for 5 seconds when he gets revived. And then you're like, oh, his resurrection has like awakened the overspell of the mansion, which is just called Ward. And it's this giant just ball of light that talks like a computer. And it becomes like your new contact for a quest line. And it's like, I need you to go. A bunch of my spells, my spell children are loose. Go find them. So you go to this like burnt out office building. And there's all these like loose spells, like fireballs and storms of ice and stuff like that, and balls of light. And you fight through them until you find like their leader, named Clarity, who is also just like a ball of like rainbow light. And the spells have started she is the leader of this emancipation commune because the spells are tired of being slaves to wizards. And your character hears that and you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I actually totally get where you're coming from. That's cool if you want to live like that. How do you want me to tell your dad that you're not coming home? It's like that, like that's the direction that it goes. Like such a funny, weird plot line. But they start mentioning characters that I'm like, I don't know who that is. So I went back and time traveled to do the first Ward storylines, and they're fun. There's like this whole, it's like this weird war zone between these kind of like refugee rebels and some kind of, what is it? It was hit by some kind of disaster, some kind of magical disaster. So sometimes there's just like giant orbs in the sky of like blob amoeba things that's like an overworld boss that you can go fight with other people. And then you go to this like compound where all these rebels are holed up. Because there's like this militant group that's also there, and it's like there's like this whole dynamic to this zone. And you do a plot line where the leader is this guy called the Monarch, the leader of these survivors. And the Monarch his mind has broken. He's having these visions, and he thinks that he has a daughter. And he's making he's painting these watercolor paintings of this daughter who doesn't exist. And this has caused a problem because he believes that she has been kidnapped by these people from one of the factions called the Carnival of Light, who are like magic jesters. And he has imprisoned a few of them, and it's creating political tensions between them, and because they have like a loose allyship with each other in the first ward. So someone in the organization is like, go talk to Monarch and like figure out what the fuck is going on with him. So you go to him, and he's like this weird, shambling mess. And there's descriptions in like the walls of text of like him like stuttering and looking around, and he just gives off this super weird vibe. And you're like, I think I can help get your daughter back. Just give me like one of these paintings, and I'll go ask one of the prisoners from the Carnival of Light about it. So you take it to them, and one of them happens to be a psychic, and he like reads the painting, and he goes, actually, this is not a fake person. This isn't like a hallucination. And you're like, what? And he goes, no, the person in this painting exists. I don't know if he's her father, probably not, but like it's a real person. So you go to, she's like a captive. She's being held captive by these mutants, and you go save her from the mutants. And it turns out that like everybody has a big confrontation, and it turns out that not only this girl, Anna, she's not his daughter. I thought it was going to be like, it seemed to me like, oh, this is her. She's like a psychic, and she's putting visions in his head so that someone can come rescue her. Like that was her plan all along. And then no, what is the real thing that happens? It turns out that Monarch, so this girl, Anna, is the daughter of a king from another dimension, and Monarch has been possessed by the king's spirit. And that's why he is like losing his mind, because the king is trying to take him over and giving him these visions and these emotions of this daughter that he never actually had, who is the king's daughter. And then you have to like fight him, and he like turns into like a crazy fucking energy form. And I was like, that was crazy. What a weird, interesting plot line. And there's just like stuff like that fairly frequently. Once you get past like the opening couple story arcs, which are mostly just kind of like introductions to the world and the characters and a lot of the concepts and stuff where you're kind of getting your bearings. There are so many fun, goofy, comic booky plot lines in that game that are really fun and genuinely pretty good. They're limited, of course, by the fact that the technology at the time was a little bit primitive for telling a story like that. So, like, there's no voice acting. There's no voice acting because these games came on discs, and that takes up a lot of space. If you're going to have a lot of voice acting, there's next to none in the game. And again, it is just walls of text, but the writing of them, at least for like the bigger story arcs, it actually feels like it has some effort put into like, okay, they're actually trying to set a scene and tell you about what's actually happening with this character. Sometimes they even have different camera angles. Whoa. This is also the point in the game where I'm around like level 30, where you start hitting, like the like level 20 through 29 story arcs. That's where you start getting to make like actual decisions. Like you could actually say like, I think I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. Like I went through one where there's this group of benevolent mutants that you go save some of the survivors, some of the like rebels from, because they were being held captive due to a miscommunication. And some of them are like chill with the mutants, and they think they're actually like cool, and they realize there's been a misunderstanding. And the other ones are like out for blood. There's like 3 of them out of the 7 that are like, fuck, they just want to kill. And you can choose whether or not to release them. You can choose whether like if you're going to let them just let loose. And I don't know what kind of repercussions that has on the storyline, but I chose not to. But like they give you things like that for you to actually kind of, role play as a character in a role-playing game. Yeah, oh my god. I don't know, man. That game I just love being in that world. I love playing my character. I love just going into the character creator and coming up with like a neat set of powers and a cool appearance and stuff like that. It is so much fun. It's a game that is engaging in ways that, I don't know, that no other MMO has really engaged me with, or like. When people say that they have a ton of nostalgia for City of Heroes, or that they love that game, or they, some of it is definitely nostalgia talking, but there is really something there. Like, it is a really interesting, cool, special game.